Today I want to make a review of Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. This is a perfect masterpiece, and not only that, but it is written by arguably the greatest writer in the English language. Now the only caveat that I'd say to that is it is possible that Shakespeare is as good as D.H. Lawrence. I'm not quite sure about this issue, and I will briefly return to it at the end of this video. But the fact remains is that D.H. Lawrence is an absolutely unbelievably good author, okay? Let me show you how good he is. Listen, I love the Bronte sisters. I love Thomas Hardy. I love Mark Twain. I love Fenimore Cooper. I love Chekhov. I love Turgenev. I love Cervantes. I love Lermontov. All of that said, D.H. Lawrence is in another league as compared to these people, okay? He is in a league of his own. D.H. Lawrence is the Usain Bolt of literature. So here are 10 reasons why this book is so good, and why in general, I guess, D.H. Lawrence is such a brilliant author. Number 1, reading through a D.H. Lawrence book, and this one especially, is like flipping through a book of art prints, okay? So do you know those beautiful books that you get where you get all the prints that Monet did, or all the prints that Van Gogh did, or all the prints that Renoir did, and you just flip through and see all those beautiful pictures one after the other? That is what it is like to read a D.H. Lawrence novel, okay? Because the art, the scenery, it just comes off every page. It's absolutely beautiful. It's really incredible. Really, I can't describe how much imagery D.H. Lawrence manages to put into my head. And in that sense, it really is just like flipping through a book of art prints. Now the second thing is that D.H. Lawrence knows how to pick a subject. So not only is he good at painting a scene, he's good at selecting the scene, and he makes his scenes very, very varied. So in this you will see that we have miners, we also have people who work on a farm, and we also have kind of intelligent people. And again, to parallel this, we see scenes from the mines, we see scenes from the Derbyshire countryside, very nice contrast, and then again we see scenes from a farm. So you have these beautiful different scenes, they're very contrasting and they're very varied. Now the third thing, and this is again related, is that D.H. Lawrence is one of the most sensual authors out there. So if, for example, we take the character Morel, as we follow him when he gets up in the morning and then goes off down the mine, you know, when he gets up and puts his thermal pants on, or when he eats a bacon sandwich, some bread and butter, an apple and an orange, and when he goes into the mine, we really feel it in a very, very sensual manner, okay? Listen, I've often said that if somebody in a D.H. Lawrence novel has naked sex in the rain on a haystack, then my God, you really feel that, okay? You absolutely feel it, because D.H. Lawrence is just such a sensual author. And I would say that, listen, on a scale of intellectualism here and sensualism at the other end of the spectrum, D.H. Lawrence is totally at this end, okay? In my opinion, the best kind of novels are sensual novels, okay? I'm not saying that kind of intellectualism doesn't have its place. It can, you know, you can sometimes have, you know, certain novels which could be considered very intellectual can also be good, okay? Although I think there's a lot of rubbish as well, which I would describe as kind of being very intellectual and lacking sensualism. But in my opinion, a sensual novel is always going to outgun an intellectual one. And what I'm saying is that D.H. Lawrence is the king of sensuality. Now the fourth thing is the prose. So D.H. Lawrence's sentences tend to be very short and staccato-like, okay? And he also does a lot of repeating. And I think this is really good, okay? Because when he starts repeating ideas, it gives you kind of time to build up and understand what he's saying, okay? So he repeats sentences and he repeats imagery, and this helps you kind of acclimatize to it in a very gradual way, which is kind of natural. And at the same time, by having staccato sentences, it's very easy to absorb, because there's nothing worse, I think, than an author who, let's say, describes a sunset or something, but does it in such a long sentence with maybe 10 commas in it, that you, as you're trying to read it, you kind of want to stop and reflect on what's gone by, but instead you have to keep going through this long, long sentence with all these commas in, okay? And what D.H. Lawrence does so well is that he compartmentalizes this. He has very staccato sentences. So you get one idea, you have time to absorb it, then you can move on to the next. And I just think this is such a simple technique, but it really is effective. Number 5, D.H. Lawrence has the ability to speak to the reader on a very simple human level, okay? He doesn't have to be patronizing or pretentious. He can speak to you in an everyday kind of manner, right? Now, I have said in the past that one of the things I don't like about Joseph Conrad, for example, is that he's always very pretentious, and he's always got this kind of highfalutin language. And sometimes I'd wish with Conrad he would just stop, being so pretentious, take a break from it, and just, pass a joke with the reader. Now, D.H. Lawrence has the skill of speaking to the reader on a very human level. And that ultimately is a reflection of the fact that, bizarrely enough, D.H. Lawrence is very much the man on the street. He is an everyman. He has that ability to be the average humble person. And that is reflected in his writing, whereby he can speak to the reader on a very normal, natural, human level. But the sixth thing that I'll say is that D.H. Lawrence can also do the highfalutin stuff. My God, he can do the highfalutin stuff. Because D.H. Lawrence is a prophet. And unlike somebody like Joseph Conrad, who also can't really do the highfalutin stuff, D.H. Lawrence can. It is totally appropriate in his novels, because D.H. Lawrence, like I say, he's a prophet. Now, if we look at somebody like Chekhov, for example, Chekhov can speak to the reader on an ordinary, humble, human level. That's one of the things I love about Chekhov. But Chekhov can't really do the highfalutin stuff, okay? And I think Chekhov recognized that. That's very clear. But my God, D.H. Lawrence can, because D.H. Lawrence is a prophet. So I opened the book at a random page and I immediately picked out this example. Meanwhile, another infant was coming, fruit of this little peace and tenderness between the separating parents. And I think it is so religious, and it is so godlike. D.H. Lawrence is so godlike, it's almost as if he knows something more than we do. That is why I totally fell in love with this book, and with D.H. Lawrence in general, because it's seemingly as if he knows secrets that we don't. And he is so authoritative, and he knows exactly what he's talking about. And if we compare this to something like Joseph Conrad, or indeed the kind of snoring pompousness of the Victorian novels, you will see with those books that really, they say very profane and banal things, but in the most pompous language, right? And that is not good. But D.H. Lawrence, he is just a god, he is a prophet. He has the ability to say things in such a unique and kind of this religious, godlike way. It's absolutely stunning. Number 7, and this is related, D.H. Lawrence's unique perspective on things, on life, on the world in general. Now listen, D.H. Lawrence's wife once said that for D.H. Lawrence, a bull is not a bull. And my God, she was absolutely right. Because D.H. Lawrence's perspective on a creature like a bull is so different from the kind of ordinary, prosaic perspective that we have. And you will read, if you read D.H. Lawrence, you will see, he'll come to it, there will come a section where he describes a bull, and you'll think, well, it's just a bull, why are you describing it for? And yet a few sentences later, you'll be thinking, my God, he's right, there is more to a bull, I never saw it like this. And with all his descriptions of people, and indeed the landscape, animals, and a whole variety of different things, he just has this totally unique perspective, and it's absolutely brilliant. And in that sense, it's very prophetic, it's very alien, it's almost as if he can see things that we just cannot. Now the 8th thing is that this is the most perfect autobiographical novel, and indeed D.H. Lawrence's master of the genre that we could call autobiographical literature. Now the thing you have to remember is it's not an autobiography, right? If we say a novel is here and an autobiography is here, then what D.H. Lawrence does is, D.H. Lawrence goes all the way along the spectrum as far as possible without making it into an autobiography. I mean, I wouldn't want this book to be an autobiography, because I want to read fiction. Okay, the guise of fiction is a very beautiful guise. You always want it in. But at the same time, the more autobiographical a novel is, the better it is. And that brings me on to something which Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, which is this. These novels will give way by and by to diaries and autobiographies. Captivating books, if only a man knew how to choose among what he calls his experiences, that which is really his experience, and how to record truth truly. And I think that's absolutely spot on. I think Ralph Waldo Emerson has nailed it there. And I think D.H. Lawrence has completely understood this. I mean, whether he read it or not, I don't know, but he is the perfect embodiment of this philosophy. And that is another reason why this book is so good. I mean, if we take, for example, the incident where Paul throws a pencil at Miriam and hits her in the face, Miriam being his lover, this is so well rendered, right? It's so honest and it's so truthful, and yet it is done without any sense of guilt. And that is why D.H. Lawrence is such a genius, because he says things honestly, he admits, he shows his errors in this way, and yet he doesn't do it with any kind of sense of guilt. And that is why he is such a stunning writer. So the ninth thing that I wanted to say is that there are some very sensitive characters in this book. So I loved Miriam, I loved Clara, I loved Paul, I loved Mrs. Morel, okay? And the 10th thing that I would say is that even though there is no plot really in this book, the drive of the book is absolutely still there. And I think that really takes brilliance. I talked about this with Fathers and Sons and Turgenev, where there isn't really a plot, but yet the novel still has drive, and you want to turn the pages, you want to read it, and it's quite gripping. And again, I'd say all of this holds for Sons and Lovers. There is no conventional plot, but there is a drive. So those are 10 reasons why I adored Sons and Lovers. I think the thing for me about D.H. Lawrence and why I like him so much is that on the one hand, I can really relate to him in so many different ways. And yet, on the other hand, he is very different to me, and he can offer me something different. With Chekhov, for example, I love Chekhov, but I think I'm very, very, very similar to Chekhov. And I kind of know everything that he thinks and everything that he writes about. With D.H. Lawrence, I not only get that, but I get something extra as well. Because D.H. Lawrence has that extra quality, that prophet quality. And so it's a bit like, you know, when your ideal partner is somebody who is kind of similar to you and understands you, but then is kind of different and can complement you and give you something different. That is what I basically feel toward D.H. Lawrence. Now the final thing I want to touch on is the question of, you know, is D.H. Lawrence as good as Shakespeare or vice versa? And what I would say is that the problem that I've got with Shakespeare is that I find Shakespeare very, very difficult to read. And I don't think I'll ever be an authority on Shakespeare, because I simply find that it's almost written, Shakespeare's works are written in a kind of foreign language. And I find it very, very difficult to say whether what he's, you know, just basically to understand him. And in that sense, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to make a fit comparison between Shakespeare and D.H. Lawrence. But I certainly believe that D.H. Lawrence deserves all the fanfare that Shakespeare is given. Because Shakespeare in English, I'd say Shakespeare is probably our biggest hero. That's the common wisdom. I say D.H. Lawrence deserves at least that much. This is a brilliant book. I completely recommend it. If you've never read D.H. Lawrence before, this really is the one to begin with. It's absolutely stunning.